Welcome, hello everybody, and thank you for joining me today. This is Tony Deering of GoCogno.com, and we are live in our private MCI group here on Facebook today. And I am beyond thrilled to have special guests today. They are Doctors Dean and Aisha Shirzai, who are authors of the book The Alzheimer's Solution. I've been telling you they've been coming for a couple days. I know you're as excited as we are, and we are ready to jump in, talk to them, and take your questions. As we start here, I'm going to invite Team Shirzai, as they call themselves, and I love that. I love that moniker. To just take a moment to tell people a little bit more about themselves, and please jump right in.
Thank you, Tony. We're so excited to be here. Thank you for having us. Hello, everyone. My name is Aisha Shirzai. I am a neurologist, a scientist, a researcher. I am an assistant professor at the Loma Linda University Health, the Department of Neurology, and I'm also in the Department of Public Health. I happen to be a chef as well. I went to cooking school to learn how to cook healthy meals for brain health, and along with the Dean, we're the creators of the Healthy Minds Initiative, which we will talk about later.
And I'm Dean Shirzai. I'm Aisha's husband, and I am a model by daytime. No, I'm just kidding. I'm a co-director of Alzheimer's Prevention Program. I'm a researcher. I'm a co-author as well, and my PhD is in lifestyle and community health. And we're so excited to be here because as we're speaking to communities, we're hoping to make a difference in the community level as opposed to where we usually work, which is the clinics and the hospital.
Well, and again, I can't thank you enough for joining me today. I am so tremendously appreciative. Now, when I read your book, I got so much out of it, and I really want people to understand. And I've been telling people in the group that I consider this the first and best book for anybody to read if they are experiencing cognitive decline, risk of dementia, or a diagnosis of early onset dementia in any case. And the reason that I feel that your book offers so much is because it offers people hope, and even more than that, a very personalized path to the prevention of Alzheimer's, which is a bold promise, but you're backing your promise up with results. I want to very briefly just read one statement here from your book that says you can control the health and resilience of your brain, and by doing so, significantly delay or completely avoid the anguish of Alzheimer's. But we want to make it very clear to people that you're not saying that can be done through some medication, some miracle drug, some silver bullet. And in fact, as you point out in your book, if we go back to 2002, the history of Alzheimer's drug research is just a history of failure after failure. You say that research effort has been misguided. So please tell us why you feel that way.
Well, there are four things that I want to start with that just to show that there's a distinction of how we do things. We come from a background of science, not just the molecular science. I was in the experimental therapeutics branch of National Institutes of Health, did all kinds of experimental research. So we did the research at the molecular level, at the population level, secondary database. Aisha just wrote the largest lifestyle paper on stroke and lifestyle. So, and at the community level. In fact, not many physicians, if any, do work in the community level, and we've done community-based research as well. So we're research-oriented. Second is that everything we do is towards raising awareness. In fact, all the profits of what we make in the book and everything goes towards making a difference and raising awareness in the communities. To that end, the third and fourth has to do with the other books and other gimmicks out there, which is selling a product at the end or funneling you slowly towards a paradigm where they end up selling you their products, their vitamins, their concoctions, or the protocols. And ours is not that. There's nothing we're selling except what's available in your own homes and communities. But in a very personalized way, we're informing the conversation. And then the other way that people actually get you is by controversial, counterintuitive things. Plants are bad, or just saying things that shock you and gives you comfort with where you are. Basically saying what you're doing wrong is fine. We are actually making the conversation a little uncomfortable. We are not doing everything right, and there's no blame in that. There's no guilt, or but it's something that we can all learn to change. That will make have a profound effect on brain health. Those 4 things are critical. I think it's not just when it comes to books or anything else you read in the media. Where's the source? Is it science, or is it just an anecdote or somebody getting on Facebook or YouTube just saying their beliefs? Or and then is it database driven? Is it driven by money behind the scenes? And are they selling something at the end of it? This is critical, and I wanted to kind of start with that idea because we're very committed. 2 of our grandparents each died from Alzheimer's. And from that, from 15 years ago when we met, our commitment is to make a difference in the communities. And that's it. That's solely it. With that in mind, the problem is that the solution is being sought not in the communities and not in the patients and not in the household. They're being sought in molecular level. Here's this molecule, something's wrong with it, we must block it. Not looking at the totality of the picture across millions of molecules that interact in the human body and across 20, 30, 40 years of time that it takes for a disease to evolve. That's where research is going wrong. That's where people are looking at things myopically, either coming up with all kinds of weird things like keto diet and all this, or selling vitamin concoctions. That's where research has gone wrong. And we did this research for many years at NIH, at UCSD, and other places, where one molecule, in this case Alzheimer's, it's amyloid, and then the second one, tau, were found to be abnormal. And absolutely, they have something to do with the disease. And we knew that association even from the very first description of the disease by Alois Alzheimer's himself. But for the last 30 years, all we have done is spend billions and billions of dollars blocking this molecule, destroying this molecule, stopping it from forming, or getting rid of it in other ways. And the result of hundreds of billions of dollars of spending has been, guess what percentage of success we've had in this field?
Well,
0.
Right.
Zero.
Right. One drug, Namenda, since 2002.
No. Namenda does. So what I mean by success is either slowing the disease or stopping it. Right. Namenda, Aricept, Residine, Exelon, all these drugs, none of them actually even claim, even the pharmaceutical companies don't claim that they slow or stop the disease. They just help the disease symptomatically, meaning that it helps some of the symptoms for a while, but the disease continues at the same rate. Even Pfizer and others have actually said this. So they don't slow the disease.
Right.
So as far as slowing the disease or stopping the disease, 0% success.
Right.
Fully 0.
Right. And just interjecting here a couple of things real quick. So you have found methods that do slow or stop the disease. And one thing I want to, just because I know the people that are watching this, so this group is people with the diagnosis of MCI in their families.
Yes.
And the book, while it's called The Alzheimer's Solution, when I read it, it was very focused on people at the MCI level. And you really do talk, and you have found things that have worked, and that's what we're going to explore now. But I do want to add a couple things here as we transition that you talk about in the book. That'll be the framework of the rest of our conversation here. First, while there hasn't been this success with medication, what you do say is, to date, the only thing that has been shown to affect the curve of decline or slow the progression of Alzheimer's disease is lifestyle changes, which is the basis of the neuro plan. And we're going to get into the neuro plan, but what it stands for is nutrition, exercise, unwind, which refers to stress management through things like meditation, yoga, restore, by which you're referring to 7 to 8 hours of detoxifying sleep, and then optimize, which is a combination of activities that challenge and stimulate the brain, and also meaningful social interaction. But particularly for this audience of people with MCI, you say in the book, and this is a very powerful statement, you say research points unequivocally to lifestyle intervention as the cure for cognitive decline. And everybody in this group is experiencing cognitive decline depending on the underlying cause or whether they may progress to Alzheimer's. Many of them won't, but they still have this underlying cognitive decline. And you've seen this with your patients. So talk about this success and experience you've had with your patients.
Oh my goodness. So there's so much evidence from decades and decades showing that lifestyle has a profound effect on cognitive status. And among people who have been diagnosed with mild cognitive impairment, a comprehensive lifestyle, which means addressing all of the elements of lifestyle together, can significantly slow down and even reverse cognitive decline. And, I can even quote a number of papers that have looked at this relationship. You quoted neuro. Let's just take nutrition as an example. We've known for a long time from, observational studies in populations and even in clinical trials that eating a particular type of a diet, which is unprocessed and mostly plants, an unprocessed plant-based diet, can slow down the progression of the disease. And, the MIND diet comes to mind. The MIND diet is a diet that is a hybrid of the Mediterranean and the DASH diet, which is essentially mostly plants. If one adheres to it, it showed that it reduces the risk of development of Alzheimer's disease in an MCI population by 53%. And that is good adherence. And even moderate adherence to that diet reduced the risk by 35%. So, when you put these numbers together and you look at different types of populations, the same theme continues. The same thing repeats itself, that, diet matters a lot. Let's take exercise as an example. We have known for a while from clinical trials that people who are on a regimented exercise program not only slow down the progression of the disease, but they are able to reverse cognitive decline. There was a study that looked at a little over 600 people, and it was a case control study. So the cases, or the people who were actively intervening in that group, were exercising about 30 minutes a day for about 3 to 4 days a week, and it was pretty strenuous exercises. And they compared them to those who essentially didn't exercise or maybe walked a little bit once in a while, and the difference was significant. Those who were in a regimented exercise program, people who were diagnosed with MCI, 47% were able to completely reverse their disease. Their neuropsychological test scores became normal. And the same thing when you look at unwind or stress management, which Dean will actually talk about. Stress management doesn't necessarily mean getting rid of all stress. It means management of stress. So the concept of good stress and bad stress comes to mind. And the perception and differentiation between good stress and bad stress is very important, because good stress is the type of stress that you want to increase. It's the kind of classes you take. It's the kind of complexity and challenges you bring in your life. And people who are cognitively in a complex and a challenging activity, and it's theirs, they tend to do much better than the rest of the population who are under bad stress. Sleep. So, looking at sleep, for example, sleep is the most important time in our day. It's the time when the brain actually starts healing itself and cleansing itself. And people who have sleep disorders like restless leg syndrome or sleep apnea, they tend to have higher level of amyloid protein, the bad protein that is associated with cognitive decline in their cerebrospinal fluid. So sleep is extremely important. Right. And then optimization of cognitive activity, keeping your mind active, is also very critical. So when you look at communities and populations who have addressed these risk factors, they have very low risk of developing dementia or Alzheimer's disease. And even if they do have mild cognitive impairment, they can significantly slow down the progression.
And in our own clinic, we see this on a daily basis. Yeah. You had a question?
Yeah. No, but please finish that thought.
So for the past 10 years, we've been focusing on MCIs, on mild cognitive impairment patients, because we really think that population is most amenable to reversing. Of course, the earlier you get somebody, the more likely that you will ever develop the disease. But even MCI, because it becomes its own marker, because when somebody has MCI, they have memory problems, so they come to you. At that stage, we've seen repeatedly when we've been able to reverse their diet, exercise, and all that pattern, and address their particular weaknesses. You know, somebody could be eating all the plant-based they want, but they have sleep apnea. If they don't address the sleep apnea, forget about it. That's going to start damaging the brain. And so if you address their particular weaknesses and build around their particular strengths, repeatedly we've seen this reversal of cognitive decline in our own clinic. In fact, we have 2 studies going on right now that will further elaborate on that with some biomarkers as well. So the data has been there. The data we've actually laid out in the book as far as big studies throughout the country. And then we saw in our clinics in Loma Linda and other places definitely corroborated and further supported that fact significantly.
And one thing here that really, when I read your book, there's 2 things in particular that rocked my world. And the first one was just your willingness to say this can be reversed. These things that we're showing you, it can be reversed. Because I'm honored to have the opportunity to talk to you. I get the opportunity to talk to a lot of the leading neurologists in the country, and they're afraid to say that. It leaves people without hope because they will not tell people this can be reversed. And you stand right up and you say that. And why don't others? And what gives you the confidence that you can say something that bold when others are afraid to?
So first of all, we wouldn't say things that were not fact and science-based. For example, some things that other people say, like, for example, we won't name the doctor, but says that he had reversed Alzheimer's, fulminant Alzheimer's. He has not been able to reproduce it, and we wouldn't say that. You can slow the disease down, and studies have shown this, not just us, but other studies have shown that even if you have Alzheimer's, with a comprehensive approach, you can slow it down. But with MCI, it's not just us. Others have shown that MCI can be reversed. As Aisha just quoted it, just nutrition was shown to reverse the disease. Just exercise by itself. Now, you add exercise and nutrition. I'm talking about a personalized approach to it. Plus all these other variables. Absolutely, you can reverse at this MCI stage. The brain is incredibly overwhelmed organ. We basically say that if you take care of the brain, you've taken care of the rest of the body. So just focus on the brain, because there are some extra things you have to do for the brain, but the few other things that you do for the brain, more than enough. They're more than enough for taking care of your heart, liver, kidney, blood pressure, and everything else. So the comprehensive approach to the brain is the way to go.
I think I just want to add something here. The reason some of the other scientists and neurologists are not, I don't want to use the word brave, but the reason why they don't want to say that is because, first of all, we're never trained in the aspect of prevention. As medical students and as residents, physicians, and doctors, we're always taught about sick care, which essentially means using pills to fix something or a knife to fix something, and that's very important. That's how we have progressed in life, and that's why people are, getting cured from traumas and, from other cancers and diseases that require that level of intervention. But when it comes to chronic diseases of aging, like mild cognitive impairment and dementia, that that theory doesn't really apply, and the concept of prevention is very important. Doctors have very little faith in people for them to be able to change their lives, change their lifestyle. And I think that's one of the reasons why they withhold from sharing that information, knowing that, people may not be able to change their lifestyle. But we don't think that way. I think everybody has a right to know what they need to change in their lives, and we empower them.
Well, and I appreciate you saying that, because when I say there were two things in your book that rocked my world, the second one was this, where you say, we don't agree that people are lazy or incapable of change. The people we meet every day are terrified, and they'll do just about anything they think will help. And I've heard that others so many times. Yeah, these things can work, but people just won't do that. And when I heard you speaking about the fact that people will and are trying, and if they try, they can succeed, and they can slow or reverse that cognitive decline. That's another really bold statement that speaks to people with MCI. And it's one of the biggest reasons I really felt I needed you in this group to talk to people and deliver that message and empower them to empower themselves.
Yeah, I mean, let's look at this. Where could that change, that language be created? Where? The comprehensive approach to brain health that requires a physician to sit there and teach people about things that they actually don't even know themselves, which is prevention. Because remember, we as physicians are trained as sick care, deliverers of sick care. Meaning, once you have a disease, then I have a pill for you. Once you have a disease, then I have a knife to cut it out of you. But as far as preventing or reversing a disease process, there's no training. And especially if it has to be comprehensive. The word comprehensive does not exist in the healthcare system. We keep getting into more and more specialized approach to disease. So everybody's looking into their own little sliver. So in the clinical model, in fact, let's follow this. 4 years of medical college, 4 years of college, 4 years of medical school, that's 8 years, 4 to 7 years of residency, that's 12 years to 15 years, then fellowship. So we are all already up to 17 years. You're going through 17 years of education from high school. Never during that time have you been trained in nutrition. Very little. In fact, the average is a couple of hours, and those hours are not really nutrition. They keep quoting in different videos that it's nutrition. It's not nutrition. It's nutritional deficiency disorders with disease, but not nutrition. Nothing as far as exercise, nothing as far as prevention. So 17 years later, you come out. Oh, and then another limitation. You are supposed to see one patient every 10 to 15 minutes. Yeah. How can you do a comprehensive approach every 10 to 15 minutes? A third limitation. You're supposed to sit down and connect with a person in order to empower them to achieve a behavior change, which is, we'll talk about how complex that is, but how also simple. Where have we learned in our medical system how to connect with people and bring behavior modification? None. So on the medical side, none. On the research side, even worse. On the research side, your grants from NIH and National Science Foundation, all those, are designed to get you focused on one molecule. The comprehensive studies are too expensive, so that NIH or others don't focus on them as much.
They won't fund it.
So that's where the limitation is. From the first day after residency, we decided that we wanted to do it a different way. We wanted to see where people have lived successfully and have lived longer than everyone else and healthier and happier. So the only blue zone in America, blue zone are places where people live the longest and healthiest.
Right.
The only in the United States was Loma Linda, so we went to Loma Linda to study this population and look at the brain relationship. And when you take care of the brain, and we'll talk about this later, you've taken care of the body, because this little 3-pound organ, which is 2% of your body's weight. Now look at this number. 3 pounds, 2% of body's weight, consumes 25% of body's energy and 50% of body's oxygen at any one point. It is absolutely overwhelmed. But it's also got incredible resilient power, which we'll talk about.
Right. And just a couple things real quick here, just so you know, and just so the people watching this know. For some reason, I'm having a little technical problem with questions. So at the moment, I'm not seeing the questions that people in the group are asking. I think as we talk, I can kind of figure that out and get that going. The other thing, as you talk, you're kind of creeping to the right and you're starting to just drift out of the picture. No, yeah, so yeah, there you go. That's perfect right there. Now, people in this group are working hard to educate themselves. I love that you mentioned the blue zones. It's something that we talk about a lot in the group, and a lot of people follow them and share posts from their site. So that's fantastic. And I think it would be fair to say, and you agree, words like nutrition or exercise, this is not the first time people in the group have heard these words. But I think there are a number of really key things that separate and differentiate your plan. And I want to touch upon a few of them and have you talk a little bit about them. I think there are three in particular because you really emphasize, first of all, personalizing the program. Second, holding yourself accountable, meaning the person with MCI. And then third, finding a community. I mean, those right there are things that I don't typically heard get talked about. And in particular, that personalization, that everybody is different. You know, in your book, you talk about case studies, and every single person's problem and solution is radically different than anybody else's. And this individualized approach, and in the book, just so that people know, you have all sorts of worksheets and tips to help people individualize the program for themselves and identify where their weaknesses are, what they should work on. But talk about the importance of that individualization.
Yeah, so the individual approach is critical because and this will become more and more relevant as we begin to learn more about epigenetics and how we can actually go at the individualization at the molecular level as well as the macro level, at the human level. But each individual has a range of risk factors that vary from person to person. Let's take Alzheimer's for that matter. So one of the myths is that Alzheimer's is a genetic disease. Well, everything is genetic. We're genetic beings. But genes don't they don't mean you have disease. Only there are certain diseases like Huntington's and others that where if you have the gene, you're going to get the disease at a certain age. We know that. But a great majority, if not significant majority of the disease of aging have to do with multiple genes. In Alzheimer's, so far, we've identified more than 25 genes that have been associated with Alzheimer's. Mm-hmm. The type that I was describing in Huntington's, where you have the genes, you're going to get the disease, constitutes only 3% of Alzheimer's. 3%. That means that in 3% of Alzheimer's, it was heavily driven by genes. Environment had very little to do with it. Although we're actually, in a new paper, we'll show that that's not the case either. But for the other 90+%, and you remember in the book we said 90% could be reversed, we were conservative. We said it's actually more than 90, but let's say 90%, it's multiple genes. What are those genes? One of the most commonly known genes is ApoE4, mm-hmm. or ApoE group. So if you have ApoE, 2 of them from your parents, ApoE2, 1 from mom and from dad, you are really protected. Uh-huh. You really have to do some really bad things to yourself to get Alzheimer's. You have to have head trauma 30 times a year, and have cholesterol in the hundreds and hundreds. But in general, you're protected. If you have ApoE4, you have higher risk. Mm-hmm. If you have 1 allele, you have 4 times greater risk. If you have 2 alleles, you have 12 to 20 times greater risk. Mm-hmm. Okay, so does that mean that if you have 2 alleles, you're going to get the disease? Guess what? Mm-hmm. 50% of those that have 2 alleles never get the disease. What happened? Right. Lifestyle, mm-hmm. environmental factors. Yeah. So, and that's one of the higher penetrance the genes, meaning one of the genes that have higher influence on outcome. What about the other genes? The other genes have to do with inflammation, meaning your body's ability to respond to inflammation. You could have genes that have poor response or good response. Others have to do with your body's metabolism. Others, which is glucose regular. Others have to do with disposal. I call it garbage disposal, getting rid of waste. You could have a great waste disposal program or a bad one. So let's assume you have a bad waste disposal system. What do you do about that? Don't create waste. You know, the old saying by the old comedian Red Skelton, doctor, it hurts when I do this. Don't do that, you know. It's almost the same thing. If you have bad response to lipids or high lipid genes, don't eat a lot of fatty foods. But another way to do this is to assume you have bad genes across those domains and live healthfully. Even if you have low risk, you're going to even reduce your risk even further. Inflammation is another common factor, big genetic group, inflammation. So don't create inflammation in your body. How do you create inflammation? Food, lack of exercise, stress, and the big one, sleep. So that's how we actually look at this, is that by looking at the personalization, looking at somebody's ability to sleep or how bad they've slept all their life, you can be assured that has contributed. We don't address that immediately, and along the line of where their deficit is, you can't do anything else.
Right.
No,
Yeah. I'm sorry. I do want to save some time here to get into the 5 elements of neuro. But before we jump into that, which we'll do next, could I ask you just to talk a little bit about the accountability element, though? I think that's an important message for people to hear.
Accountability. So accountability is essentially holding somebody responsible for their actions and making sure that one sticks to the program, and it's a small incremental step towards that ideal goal of whatever that may be for anyone. Remember, it's personalized, so you know your step might be completely different from my steps towards better brain health, and that's one of the reasons why we always emphasize seeing families instead of individuals or whoever it may be. If it's in a group, if it's in a family, if it's in a community, the adherence to a better lifestyle is much better because of accountability, because of the support that one gives to each other, and also making sure that they adhere to that plan. So that's incredibly important. And for those who don't even have another person in their life, or if they're living alone, nowadays, your MCI community online, the Facebook account, is so incredibly important. That support actually makes a big difference. And from a scientific perspective too, when they've looked at studies, the programs that have been quite successful, or when you see a massive change in lifestyle, has been under circumstances where there's always been accountability or a reminder system or a coaching system where people adhere to that healthy lifestyle.
And there's a personal aspect to that. Our least favorite word in English language is motivation. What is motivation? I mean, the people that are motivated, we're pretty motivated. It just comes. I mean, we had nothing to do with it. It was a series of things that happened when you were growing up and genetics. But how do you operationalize motivation for everybody? It's the worst thing when physicians tell patients, you just have to be motivated. Well, if they're motivated, they wouldn't be here. I mean, so throw that word away. The way to keep a person accountable is by creating specific targeted goals around that person's capacity and resources, and give them small series of successes that are visible and measurable, and you can check it and make sure that you've achieved it. When you create a series of successes along your own steps toward a clear path, the brain puts an emotion next to it. There are 2 big emotions. I like it, I don't like it.
Okay.
And as these successes build and build and build, guess what happens? You become motivated.
Right.
You become accountable.
So let me ask you this. I was going to ask this question, but one of the people watching jumped in and asked it. I think it's one of the most important questions on the mind of anyone with MCI. It's this: is it ever too late to start? I mean, is it too late for me? I'm this age. I have these habits. Is it ever too late to start?
No, never. Never. It's never late.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have 87 billion neurons. When they say use 10% of your brain's capacity, that's false. You're using 100% at 1% efficiency.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So 87 billion neurons, and they can make a couple of connections each, or as many as 30,000 connections. Although the number of cells don't change too much, there was a time we thought we never grew new cells after a certain age. We know now we do grow new cells, but it's not that important. What we do as we get older and older and older at any time in life is make those connections.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those connections are protection at a 30,000 level.
Yeah.
X to the 30,000. Well, actually, it's not X to the 30,000. Let's just multiply by 30,000. I mean, these 87 billion neurons, even if you lose a billion of them, other 30,000 per cell is going to give you protection.
And from a vascular neurological perspective, I'm a vascular neurologist, so I've been trained in vascular neurology. When you look at the brain, there are millions and millions and millions of arteries that supply oxygen and nutrition to the different parts of the brain.
Right.
And with age and poor lifestyle, these arteries get hurt, and they develop hardening of the walls. The term atherosclerosis is used, which essentially means that these arteries die off because of inflammation, because of oxidation, because of uncontrolled glucose levels, so on and so forth. And when you give the brain the opportunity to reverse these conditions, the arteries actually get better. And we've known that for cardiology or for cardiac diseases for a long, long time. But the same happens at an exponential level for the brain.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have better arteries, you have better blood flow, and the brain actually starts healing themselves.
That's great. So now that we've established it's never too late to start, let's start. Okay, and again, when I talk about the things that really differentiate your plan and really grabbed me, it's the path. Yeah, people need hope and they need a path, in my view. Those are the two things that they need. And your neuro plan just walks them right through it. And so I'd like to take a little I think got plenty of time left to jump into these things. So let's start with the specifics of the neuro plan. And just to kind of introduce it, one thing that really leapt out at me in the book, now if I get 10 neurologists and I put them in a room and I ask them, what's number one? For someone with MCI, what's number one? They're going to say exercise, and I think you know that. And of course, exercise is high on your list, but your chapter on nutrition just says emphatically nutrition's number one. Nutrition is number one. Talk a little bit about why you say that when what people hear more about is the exercise, which is important too.
Right. I would like to actually start by saying that, out of the 5 elements, nutrition, stress management, and sleep, they are the providers of the right environment for the brain to cleanse itself and to heal itself. Exercise and optimization of cognitive activity actually grows brain connections. So you need all of these elements at the same time for the brain to start getting better and for mild cognitive impairment to either be halted or reversed. That said, yes, nutrition is extremely important, although Dean and I always go back and forth between, which one is more important.
But to me, for Jane Doe, it's exercise. For John Smith, it's sleep. For Bill, it's mental activity, and so on and so forth. Meaning that the number one depends. Remember, we started this whole thing about personalization. What does personalization mean? Where your weaknesses and where your strengths lie is where one has to start. And your number one is different than my number one. Where I need to focus on the most at this point in my life, where I've been plant-based all my life, well, not all my life, the last 15 years. I've fallen off the wagon a little bit on exercise because I recently injured myself. So guess what my number one just became? Exercise.
Okay.
And I've been a little stressed because the camera doesn't work here and that. In this moment, that's number one. So as you understand that if we're talking about personalization, all 5 of those elements are extremely important. And the number one has to be your number one.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you don't focus on that, if you have sleep apnea and you're not addressing it, you could be eating a truck full of kale and avoid all the butter on the planet, and you still won't heal your brain. So you have to address your needs and your strengths.
Right, and that is a great point. So with nutrition, your message comes through very quickly. Whole food, plant-based diet with limiting sugar, salt, and processed food.
Yes.
So just a little guidance, a little more on that element of it.
Right. So nutrition seems to be a very quick and an easy way to improve brain health because it's something that we do on a regular basis. We're exposed. It's the most important environmental exposure. We're exposed to food 3 or 4 times a day. So whatever you eat will either break the brain or make the brain. And from all of the studies, whether it's the MIND diet or the DASH diet or the Mediterranean diet or, the Ornish diet, or flexitarian, whatever, it's the plant components that stand out. I studied this in a large population, the California teacher study. I actually got an award from the American Heart Association for it too. Because when you think of, say, a Mediterranean diet, most people think that it's essentially fish and cheese and some wine and sitting next to a lake and listening to some, Greek music. But it happens to be the unprocessed greens, the beans, the berries, the vegetables, the fruits, and the whole grains that provide the right kind of carbohydrates, the right kind of proteins, the right kind of fats. So we say, try to eat as much as you can of unprocessed plant foods and try to reduce processed foods. Because when you reduce processed foods, you automatically reduce salt, you automatically reduce processed sugar, which is, in everything. Even hot dogs have sugar in them.
Mm-hmm.
You automatically reduce the kind of processed wheats and grains that increase your blood glucose, or they have high glycemic index. Mm-hmm. And also reduction of bad fats. Fats are not bad. It's a type of fat that we consume. So reduction of saturated fats and cholesterol that mostly come from animal sources, and increasing unprocessed plant fats like nuts and seeds and avocados, and those are amazing. And a typical diet may look like some greens and some root vegetables and roasted vegetables and some whole grains like quinoa and brown rice, and a dressing that is made out of plant fats like avocados and nuts and seeds. And that seems to be the repeating pattern in every study.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so Mediterranean diet, MIND diet, and it's interesting. U.S. News and World Report does a report on all the diets every year, and they consistently rate those diets not only among the best diets but among the easiest to adhere to. And of course, as you mentioned when we began, even with the MIND diet, even people who only loosely adhered to it had significant cognitive better outcomes. So that sounds like a great place to start. Now, exercise. I think that people do hear that, but I think there's some messages that they're still not clear on. Just typically what people want to know: what kinds of exercise, how much, and then I think a lot of people don't get the message. Listen, it's great to go out and do X minutes of exercise, but finding ways to be physically active throughout the day is also tremendously beneficial. So talk a little bit about that.
You said it beautifully, Tony. So the definition of exercise has changed. People used to think just going out for a walk in the park is also exercise, and we hear it all the time and we say that's wonderful, but that's meditation. Exercise has to be strenuous. Strenuous exercise, the one where you have a hard time finishing a sentence and you break a sweat, and that's a beautiful way to define it, is essential for brain growth and brain protection. And doing about 30 minutes of strenuous exercise 4 to 5 times a week is a great goal. But, the next step of exercise is what people are actually doing. So if somebody hasn't exercised at all, the first step is to start exercising for 5 minutes a day,
Mm-hmm.
and then slowly and gradually, incrementally increasing it to that goal. We always say, bring exercise into your homes.
Mm-hmm.
Don't get a gym membership because, you have to get dressed up. And some of these gyms are like quick fashionable. You just have to spend a lot of time getting ready to go. And, external weather or other circumstances may prevent you from doing it. When we say, get some dumbbells in your living room, get an exercise mat, see if you can invest in a recumbent bike because that takes care of balance issues and a lot of, joint issues that individuals may have, and try to do it at home and get it over with so that you can resume anything else. And as far as staying active, the idea of sedentary behavior is the new smoking. So if someone exercises for 30 minutes a day, but then they have a desk job and they sit behind their desk for about 7 to 8 hours, forget about that 30 minutes. It actually negates the positive effect of exercise. So getting up every hour and moving around is also very important.
Yeah, and let me just say one thing. In terms, I just loved your book so much. You're starting to get that impression. But what I love is how real you keep it, because you talk a lot in the book about, like, as you say, recumbent bicycle, because people who may have issues with other kind of exercise. But one thing that I loved, and I admit I mean to do this and I'm going to do this, is this idea of just these little pedals you can put on the floor.
Yes.
You can buy them. I looked on Amazon. You get them like $35, $40. It's just like two little bicycle pedals. You put it on the floor. You can sit on the couch and you can just pedal your little feet away and get a little exercise. And I'm sitting at my desk right now. I want to put one under my desk and just pedal on that thing. So it's very practical. It's very pragmatic, the things you talk about.
It has to be. I mean, why does behavior not take place? Behavior is abated, is stopped because it's too many steps. Too many steps from your comfort zone. So how do you actually start something is by reducing the number of steps. For somebody who hasn't exercised in months, for them to go get a gym membership, get dressed up, go there, start a whole program, and do it on a regular basis, failure. You know how we know this? We have actually spoken to 3 major gym owners, and they actually oversell the gym memberships by 80% or more because they know that percentage of people never show up to the gym.
Yeah.
Make your living space your gym. Anything extra is extra, but make your living space. By doing that, you eliminate the limitations. And if it says recumbent bike or one of those foot pedal, you eliminate 2 other steps of limitation for as we get older: balance and vertical pain.
Yeah, that's great. I'll tell you what, while I want to move to unwind next, I do want to quickly step back. A really good question in the group, and frankly, I don't hear this question asked enough. I don't have a good answer for this, but they asked, going back to diet, I mentioned salt. And someone asked, well, what is it about salt? Why should I be reducing salt?
Salt damages the inner walls of arteries. And like I said earlier, the brain is the most vascular organ in our body. We always tend to forget how nutrients get to the brain. What are the highways leading to the brain? Arteries. So arterial health is incredibly important. And if somebody develops high blood pressure or damage to the inner walls of the arteries because of a lot of salt and inflammation and oxidation, forget about any vitamin, forget about anything good you eat getting to it. That's why it's important to address vascular health.
The other way salt damages is how it works. Excessive salt, let's say, it affects the nephron system of the kidney, and eventually it actually affects blood pressure directly because it retains more water, and indirectly by damaging that system. So if blood pressure goes up, in fact, a recent paper showed that blood pressure by itself is associated with 20% increased risk of Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
So sodium is a major contributor to that.
Okay, that's helpful. One quick note just to the people in the group, and I meant to say this at the beginning, but you have to understand when doctors get on these kind of things, the one thing they really can't address is people's kind of individual combinations of medical issues, or without examining you, without seeing your chart. So what I'm really focusing on is the more general questions that'll get to someone specific. I don't want you to feel that I'm ignoring you. I'm paying attention to time here. I know you've got a hard stop. I can kind of see we're not going to get through all 5, but you've had a chance to talk some about sleep and some about social interaction. We haven't talked much about the unwind, the U in neuro, and that stress reduction. Let's take a couple minutes to talk about that, and then I'm going to give you a few minutes just to kind of wrap up with some final thoughts.
Thank you. So unwind, or U, is at the middle of our neuro plan, figuratively and conceptually. Without stress management, nobody will start a nutritional program, nobody will start an exercise program, nobody will start a cognitive enhancement program. Nobody's sleep will be, one of the main reasons people have sleep disorders because of stress. So we describe stress as 2 types of stress, good stress and bad stress. Bad stress is the kind of stress that's not driven by your purpose. It doesn't have a clear timelines. It just runs on and on without any of your goals, any of your dopamine release emotional goals being reached. That's bad stress. And good stress is the kind of stress that is driven by your purpose. It's not any easier. It's really hard. And a lot of times you're getting a PhD, getting a master's, finishing an art program or a project in the community is extremely hard. But they appear to be the most protective things. When the brain is stressed with good stress, the kind of stress that's driven by your purpose, has direction, has meaning, has steps of success, it actually builds the brain. So how is it that the brain recognizes this and then affects the body? Same place. The limbic system identifies the stress as good or bad, and then it sends different messages to your hypothalamus and pituitary. Mm-hmm. And if it's good stress and if the good emotions are conveyed to it, and then the message that goes to hypothalamus and pituitary is reduces the cortisol, reduces the adrenaline, increases the oxytocin, equilibrates the thyroid and the growth hormone and insulin factors, and it's the best thing for your body. This is the good stress. Mm-hmm. Bad stress, different set of signals to the hypothalamus, different set of signals to the pituitary. Cortisol goes up, your thyroid system goes awry, your insulin system goes awry, your adrenaline goes up, your oxytocin, which is the good hormone, goes down. The whole system is thrown to a loop. So it is critical to identify your good stress and bad stress. And a lot of times people don't actively do that. Mm-hmm. We have whiteboards everywhere. In fact, our dining room, the whole walls are a whiteboard. Mm-hmm. We have 2 kids, so we want them to be creative. Where they can. So we actually clearly and specifically write what are the bad stresses in our life. I just don't feel good is not a clear bad mm-hmm. stress. I don't like this part of this project at my job right now because of this reason. That's specific. Mm-hmm. Then you can do something about it. Good stress is I want to get to learn some sort of dancing. You can see I'm so bad at dancing. I don't even know any names. I was about to come up with a name. Some dance. I was about to say mamba or some. But in any case, some dance in 6 months. That's clear. It's enjoyable. That's why you came up with it. And it has a clear goal and direction and means. And that's going to create good stress. It challenges every part of your brain. You're learning. That distinction is important. That's central. And as more good stress takes over your life because you're actually planning it, the bad stress dissipates. Mm-hmm. Or actually doesn't take consciousness. And then you can start worrying about nutrition and exercise and everything else. It's central to everything.
Yeah. And in the book, and again, people have heard meditation, have heard yoga. I've learned to meditate. It's changed my life. I've tried yoga, and yoga's not for me. But what I love in the book is, I mean, you've got a whole long list of things. I mean, not everybody wants a particular solution, but they can find something for them. So what are some other good stress reduction techniques?
So, For people who are not used to meditation, they can practice or exercise mindfulness. And mindfulness essentially means focusing on one thing at a time. Focus and attention is the gateway to memory. And if we are able to strengthen our focus and attention, cognition improves. And an easy exercise is to focus on one's breath. And, every time you think about something else, refocus on that breath. Because every time you bring back your concentration to that one act, it's like a biceps curl for the brain. We've actually worked with people who started for only 30 seconds and then their way up to doing about 30 minutes a day. Some people don't like that at all. Dean actually works with a lot of people who do walking meditation, which is having a steady pace and doing that over and over again in a very calm way, in a calm place, where they can focus on that act and nothing else. And there are so many other activities, too, that develop that mindfulness and that focus.
Okay. Now, we are getting close to the end of the time we have here with you, and you've been incredibly generous with your time. And there's so much more we could talk about that maybe sometime in the future we'll come back and talk about a few other things. But knowing we've got to wrap up here, just any final thoughts on your part? And I know we talked a little bit beforehand about what you don't do, that you don't sell products, that you're not hawking something, that you're not trying to, and just anything you want to make sure to mention before we finish here.
Sure.
Yeah. So the focus of our work is to raise awareness about the fact that people have power over their mind health and their brain health in their homes and communities. And there are certain things they can do at an individual level, at the family level, and then at the community level. So we have a non-for-profit organization, HealthyMindsInitiative.org. HealthyMindsInitiative.org. It has three functions, like I said: raise awareness, create programs in the communities for those communities that invite us, as well as do research. And because it has to be data-driven, it can't be an anecdote. The internet is full of anecdotes. My uncle ate a can of Coca-Cola and not the Coke, but the can itself, and is cured from cancer. It doesn't work like that. Anecdotes mean nothing. It doesn't matter how many anecdotes. So research is the third pillar of this. And everything we do as far as the book sales and profits goes towards this. And any community that wants to help us or wants to partner with us, we would love it. In fact, the largest community-based projects that are going on for brain health is actually driven by us in beach cities and other places. And we would love to partner with people.
Yeah. Fantastic. And as I wrap up here, I guess I want to just quickly say as well, even though I enthusiastically and relentlessly recommend your book, I do want people to know, I'm the same, I don't get any compensation, I don't get a commission, I don't get a little cut. I just really believe in your message. I believe in what you're doing for people. And again, that hope and that path. I thank you so much for joining us today. I know that people found it invaluable. I am thrilled to have had you today. I look forward to working with you in the future. And if you'd like to say goodbye and good day to the folks, we have reached the point where we need to sign off.
It was such a pleasure being here, Tony. Thank you so much for reaching out and for including us in this beautiful group of yours. And we're connected for life. Once we connect, you have us for life, and we'd love to come back if you want us to. And I'm really grateful to everybody joining us today.
And thank you.
Yep. And thank you. Thanks to everybody who joined us. Thanks in advance to the hundreds of people who I know will watch the archived version of this. And with that, we'll wish everybody a good day, but we'll stay in touch. Thanks again.
Have a great day.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.